Some presidential candidate John Huntsman is with me now, the former Utah governor, served as the U.S. ambassador to China under President Obama. Nice to see you back here.
Great to see you,
in
Bill.
New York,
Thank you.
and good morning to you. End that crony capitalism. Seems like it's in our bloodstream. If you were president, could you and how would you?
Crony capitalism is real, and we've got it because we have incentives in our tax code, loopholes, deductions, corporate welfare. I put forward a tax reform proposal, Bill, that was endorsed by the Wall Street Journal, the only candidate to have such a program. It calls for the phasing out of all corporate welfare and all subsidies. Why? Because this nation can't afford it any longer. But second of all, this is exactly what it leads to. And what is the result then? We not only have an economic deficit in this country, we have a trust deficit. The people in this country no longer have trust in their institutions of power, whether it's Congress, the executive branch, Wall Street, Penn State, whatever it might be. When you're running on empty as it relates to trust toward your institutions of power, that's a very precarious place for this country to find itself.
And it's going to be a factor in 2012. As I mentioned during this debate 30 minutes ago, the question for people in America is how they feel about how they are and how they feel about how their family is doing and the friends around them and how they feel about the future. Sarah Palin was talking last night, too, about the whole issue of class warfare, which has already become an issue in this campaign. I want you to listen to this and I'll ask you about it.
I wish candidates would start talking more about the class warfare that President Obama does perpetuate, and more importantly, that they start talking about what the solutions are, what they can do about it. What these candidates can do about it is start talking about the crony capitalism that is a part of this White House and this Congress today.
All right, now, the 99%ers, the 1%ers, class warfare, you can see it already emerging, and it's getting into our own bloodstream within 12 months to go. Whether you agree with it or not, does it work as a campaign wedge issue in 2012?
Listen, if you failed on every other front to get this economy moving, if you failed to build any confidence in where we're going, if you failed to address issues like banks that are too big to fail, all of which where the president finds himself, what do you resort to? You resort to dividing and conquering. You resort to class warfare. You resort to dividing people, which is exactly the direction he's going. That's not a winnable strategy. It's a painful strategy for this country because we're so divided as it is. We don't need any more division.
But my question was whether it will work, and you think it will not.
This country is divided enough as it is. It doesn't need a leader. It doesn't need a president who's going to stand up and divide them even more. That's not where this country needs to go.
We went out and polled a lot of people this past week, and we still find in our Fox polling that you're struggling. Our latest poll has you down at 3%, right? Now, right near the bottom. Are you changing that in any way?
The polls outside of New Hampshire don't much matter at this point. We're working hard in New Hampshire. We just did our 101st public event in the state. Our numbers are moving up. Over the next several weeks, you're going to see us completely conventional wisdom, as always is done in the state of New Hampshire.
Well, you've got 2 months to do it, but I imagine right now you can run a pretty cheap campaign because all you really need is gas money, because that's the only state where you're competing. If New Hampshire doesn't come through, are you finished?
Well, New Hampshire is always the state that always sets the trend for everybody down market. I mean, look at candidate after candidate. They go to New Hampshire, low expectations, they upend conventional wisdom, which is what we're going to do. And the game changes completely. So the rest of it today is drama, it's political theater. All of that's going to come to an end, Bill. And then the good folks in New Hampshire come January 10th, they're going to stare at the ballot box and they're going to say, I've got to make a decision. Who has the background, who has the vision, who has the leadership to be president of the United States? And in that case, when it comes down to jobs and trust, I have no doubt about where they're going to find themselves. It'll be a two-man race in New Hampshire.
Between you and
probably Mitt Romney.
And Mitt Romney. Okay, we'll see how that goes. Issue of the day is the super committee.
Right.
Are you optimistic?
The very fact that we have a super committee, can we say, Bill, is a total admission of failure in our system. Total admission that we have no executive leadership or president who didn't lead the way. Furthermore, you've got a super committee that is focused on $1.5 trillion over 10 years. That is hardly going to get us to where we need to be. In other words, we're going to succeed in passing on to the next generation a debt to equity, a debt to GDP ratio in this country that is going to look more like Italy and Greece in the years to come. I say you got to focus more like what the Ryan plan calls for, $4 to $6 trillion.
So you're predicting the super committee fails, is what you're saying?
there's no reason to think they would succeed. So here we are, kind of kicking the can down the road, which is the worst possible thing we could be doing. In the absence of leadership, there's going to be mischief making on Capitol Hill. That's exactly where we are.
Thank you for your time, and congratulations to you and your #1 fan. Today's your anniversary.
28 years of marriage.
28 years.
How about that?
Well done.
7 kids to show for it.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bill.
to
I
All right.
appreciate
We'll
it.
see you down the road.